All right, so like we have an hourly level here, right? And a lot of the times you're going to see hold levels, they get hit 2 and 3 times. So this is like a big question that people have, like how come this hold level is getting hit a second and a third time? And you know, we see points in the charts where you have, it doesn't matter the level, like you can see it hit 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times, right? And when you get that happens when the level has, and I'm going to delete this one here because that's not really helping us with this right now. Actually, should be I believe this is a 4-hour level. So let's just mark, you know what, let's just delete it. It's fine. We don't really actually need it for this example. So like if this was a daily level right here, then you could hit it multiple times. Then you could say the hierarchy above it. So you have a 4-hour level here. That's less than the daily. You have a 4 here. You have an hourly here. You can buy this level now a second time because the time frames that are holding it up underneath it are lower than it. So it still follows the rules of time. Because this is an hourly level, you have a higher time frame above it here, which is a 4-hour. That means you will not hit this level and you can't buy it a second time. Sometimes it will happen where you hit it a second time, but then you always run into the question, oh, is it actually hitting it or did it just hold trend, right? Like maybe we just held trend. Maybe there's another level on the chart. Like you would not be buying this 25769, so 25,769.90 cents. You would not be buying that again because it has higher levels above it, right? So like if you lose this 4-hour level, you either need another 4-hour or a daily to stop you. Now that can be a daily trend, that can be a 4-hour trend. So if you lose this, that daily trend could in theory stop you. So you could get to a point where you do something like this, but it's the daily trend that's holding. And this would look like, oh, it was hit on the hourly and that's holding the move. But you could also go like this, hit that hourly and not close above that trend, and then you would just dump. But because the key component there is that trend, it's not the fact that it hit the hourly hold level again and can it hold or can it not hold, because that just kind of leaves you with this unanswered question in a way. It just leaves you with this, oh, is it going to hold, yes or no, right? So like this we cannot buy because there's time frames above it bigger than it. So that's why I like to create kind of this laddering of time frames. So like you'll see here I have the biggest time frame here, which is, well, technically the biggest time frame in this move is the daily trend. So that's fine. We have daily trend. After that we have 4-hour reverse, we have 4-hour hold level, and then we have a 1-hour hold level. And we have this greedy 3 minutes. So like I kind of want to talk about all of these levels and the way in which we would interpret them and move through them, because we can do like a deep dive on Bitcoin today, but I think this would be much better. Anyways, teach you guys something new, guys and gals. So yeah, I look at this trade and I kind of draw a line at this 3-minute level, and my line looks like this. And it's all about being able to identify where polarity is going to exist in the future. So like I would either target the 4-hour or the 3-minute and nothing in between. Like I wouldn't target the levels above this 4-hour, and I wouldn't target anything between this and this or below this. I would target exactly these two levels, and how I would define that. And the difference that would happen here is if we hit this 4-hour hold level or this 4-hour reverse, it doesn't matter, any one of these levels. What we're doing is we're creating that trail off of that daily. So the daily is hit, the 4-hour is hit. You're kind of closing off timeframes at that point. Like you can no longer hit daily timeframes if this 4-hour bounces you. If you were to go all the way down to this 3-minute, which just so happened to coincide with a daily at that point, then you can still hit daily timeframes. So you can still use this trend to support you. You can make a daily hold level here that could support you. So like by hitting this daily, you're not locking off any timeframes. You're hitting the daily, and like you can't hit the weekly here. That's clear as day because that would be breaking our rules of time. Like it would just be breaking the science. The data points all of a sudden would start to make sense. The nature of decycling, which is everything the charts are built on, which is mathematical vertices that reduces against each other, that formula breaks when you hit a weekly. So you can't hit a weekly here. It's as simple as that. You can hit exactly a daily because we have a daily created. I guess I should check if we have weekly. No weekly. Okay, good thing I said that. Good thing I checked before I continued, because if we had a weekly and then I made this big speech, it would have not been a good thing. So if we hit the daily here, we can hit the daily again. If we hit the 4-hour, we can no longer use these and we can no longer lose them. So then you get into these like intersecting points where you're losing a daily above the 4-hour trail. So like you come out here and that's where trends collapse and you just bleed through moves. Like, oh, there's a 4-hour hold level here. How come it didn't hold even though it was never tested and touched? Because you've lost that daily. So now you need a daily or a weekly to offset you. Like in order for this move to stop moving that way, you need to be in the range of a daily or a weekly. You know, you'd need to be something like, okay, back here, information from here, daily trend off a hold, just whatever you can do to create daily information, right? Then that's where you would be. So that's the thing about hitting this 4 hour here, is if you hit the 4 hour and you're out here and you break this daily, like the move is gone, right? Or if you hit this daily down here, all of a sudden you can keep hitting this daily. This trend, it can continue to hold, right? So that's like a really interesting cue of how the architecture of the charts work. So that's why I like to draw, you know, I've got a 4 hour reverse, I've got a 4 hour hold, I've got a 1 hour hold, and these are all, let's just double check these to make sure that's what they are. Should be a 4 hour hold level. Yep. No, it should be a 1 hour
Quick
hold
question.
level. Yep.
Can I? If we break the daily, why can't that 4 hour still hold us? I thought like -1 time frame.
Okay, keep listening. Yep, good question, but we'll get to that in a bit here. +1 -1, remember, that's application based, not theory based. So it's based on the application. So not always +1 -1 is a specific. Like, don't make that mistake where theory based and application based bleed into each other. You're treating +1 -1 as if it's theory based. +1 -1 is application based, right? So it can't be something that you apply to everything. It's one of the few things. It's comparative analysis versus technical analysis. A hold level is TA, where +1 -1 is CA, right? So just going back to the previous lessons on +1 -1, it's application based, and not every application is the same for +1 -1. So that's something you learn over time, how to apply +1 -1 properly. But in this case, the theory takes over, because this is a theory based conclusion, right? Like, you're using theory to say hold levels daily, 4 hours, 1 hour, right? So you wouldn't mix the two. You would either be using theory based or application based, and there's a time and a place for each of them. So yeah, we can get to that in a little bit, in a bit more depth, but that's the kind of the quick and skinny answer of that with +1 -1. Just don't try to force +1 -1 into theory based, where you're using it all the time, every spot, always, right? Because you're going to find yourself in these cues where you're in this move right now, for example, and what trail are you following here? Like, I would immediately say, like, okay, well, you've got a 4 hour hold level right here. Yeah, okay, good, great. 4 hour hold levels hit. Perfect, cool. Even this like backside was hit, goes to the front side here. That's yeah, that's great. And then this backside is hit here. So like, you're +1 -1 into time frames of 1 hour, right? So you're hop skipping too far ahead, because you're going into a bigger time frame and just saying like, oh, lose a daily +1 -1, when the +1 -1 trail actually exists from the hold levels here, which is offset by this weekly here, right? So you have to be careful with +1 -1, because it does have that layer between application and theory, where if you use it too theory specific, where you're trying to apply it to everything, it'll introduce leaks. Like, +1 -1 is about understanding the comparative analysis on the charts and then applying that theory appropriately, right? Because we can clearly see here that this is a 4 hour trail of moves, right? 4 hour, 4 hour, 4 hour. Even this one, if you wanted to say the backside hit there, I would like to see it still come up and move up, but it's trying to gain the 4 hour hold level. And by doing that, I'll have to gain the 1 hour in the move current. Like, it'll have to go and gain this and hold this current in order to move up. And that's where you'd use that, right? Because that's the application base of using +1 -1 comparatively against what's moving the chart down, right? As to here, the chart isn't kind of moving down yet. We've created a daily, and then we need to see which level is going to get hit. Because now that we've created the daily, we can't use application-based theory on this, because we still have theory-based theory on this. We still have theory to go through, which is your hold levels, right? So you can't use it in that way. So, and that's why I like to have this 4 hour here, this one here, this one here, because it will give us clear direction of what holds the move and what to expect next, right? Again, if we hit this daily, none of these time frames up here get locked off, right? But if we were to hit this 4 hour, the daily, now all of a sudden it gets locked off. Like, that gets locked off. The daily we don't use anymore. So by seeing what time frames are holding the move, we can see what other time frames we're allowed to lock off in this move, right? And then if you hit this hourly, right, but created a 4 hour hold level here, maybe where would the 4 hour hold level be? But you created a 4 hour hold level here and hit this hourly. So like, going to the oopsies, there we go, going to the bigger piece of this. If you hit this hourly and created the 4 hour here, then your trail wouldn't exist here like this. It would be like this. It would be daily to 4 hour. And then you would have to see, because that would be creating your 4 hour trail, right? Like, that would be your daily right here, your daily trend, your 4 hour, and then you'd be creating a trail where then you would use +1 -1, right? But again, just not there yet, because it's not like the theory based components of this chart hasn't fired yet. Like, you're still trying to figure out, are you going to the 4, are you going to the 1, are you going to the daily? But then by hitting those time frames, it will lock off the larger time frame. So that's something you have to be aware of. And then you can get into the comparative analysis once the technicals of the chart are set. So that's one of the key things there too. Technical set and then comparative analysis. And as to why I call it comparative analysis, going all the way back to butterfly effect, which was many, many years ago, because you have to compare the events of the chart. And if comparative analysis, and that's a good way to think about it, Entropy, is that you can't compare the events of the chart yet because they haven't happened. So you can't use application-based theory because comparative analysis is application-based theory, but we have nothing to compare to yet because we don't know which level is hit. So that's why you can't use +1, -1 here. You have to actually set your technicals first. Your theory base has to execute so that your comparatives or your application theory or your application layer can then be compared against the events that are happening in the moment, right? Because it's going to be a different set of technicals if you hit the daily versus if you hit the 4 versus if you hit the 1 versus if you create a hold level here or you create a hold level there, 4-hour, daily, et cetera, right? So it's like a great question, but then just getting through that speech, the whole kind of point of that is there's nothing to compare to if you don't have the technicals yet. Like we couldn't use comparative analysis of this trend because the trend simply didn't exist yet. So now we can't compare that these 4 hours need to now ladder the move up. See what I mean? Because we simply haven't made it yet. So the theory has to execute first, and then your application layer can execute, which is technicals execute first, comparatives execute second. And just by the nature of why I call them comparative analysis back in the day, because it was like, well, you have to have events to compare to, right? So TA, then CA. And then before those layers, it's procedural analysis, which is the possibilities of what could happen and making the decisions before those trades happen. So then procedural comes before technicals because their procedural layer is everything executed prior to the trade, using your technical analysis to mark the correct levels, but then using procedural analysis to say, like, this trade hasn't happened yet. Where do I think it's going to go and why? And how do I risk mitigate that? How do I enter the trade properly? Everything procedural, right? All your procedural layers, all your blueprint, your procedurals, your preparation for the trade. Your technicals then execute because you hit one of your forms of PA. You're using TA to understand what to do with PA, like risk management, all that stuff. One of your technicals hit, that allows the events of the future to be starting to be created, which then kicks you into comparative analysis, right? So like just down the trail of how you would manage a trade would just be very simply, before anything happens, you do your PA first. If that happens, you mark your TA. And then when your TA is set, then you get into CA. So it's like step 1, 2, and 3. And the easiness of them all. Like this is the easiest layer. This is like, I would actually say technical analysis is the easiest layer. But you could also say procedural because you're not actually making decisions at that point. You're just figuring out what could be possible, right? Like rewind this chart to here, for example, and you have a 4-hour level, you have an hourly level, you have another hourly level down here that bounced the move. This is the next part of the chain. So then you could just say like, oh, here's my technicals. What's the best way to risk mitigate this? Should I enter the 4-hour? No, because if it goes down to the 1 hour, then I'm going to get stopped out. So I should just enter the 1 hour, the greediest level. And if that doesn't, and this is this is not always going to be a formula to use. Don't always just say the easiest level or the greediest level, because that's, you miss a lot of trades like that. And then if this executes, maybe I can buy that as a reverse, but we can't see if that's a reverse yet because then comparatives haven't happened. All we've done is identified this as a buy, right? So that's where your +1, -1, you wouldn't have used it properly there because you need your TA on these levels first before you can start using +1, -1. And the only thing you could do in this moment right now in terms of +1, -1 is you could say which 4-hour will hold the move. And that's going to say like this is in succession. It locks off the daily, right? Like that whole queue of +1, -1 where you go down a time frame. But we do have that now. We have the 4-hour. So then if we were to go to the 4-hour, we would say, okay, is it going to hit this or is it going to stop here? Based on which one, this would break the move up for longs, this would hold it down for shorts, right? And then so you'd have to hit this 4-hour first and then pick one of these two levels to go to. So and then that's where you'd use your +1, -1 because you could say if this is going to move up, which is your daily trend, if that's going to move up, it has to do it off a 4-hour level. So you have a 4-hour origin here, so that would be the spot that breaks the move. You have a hold level here. So is it going to go here or is it going to go down here? And then if it hits this level, right, are you then going to use this to move it down in the charts more, or are you going to go to the break level to then create that hold here and then move up, right? So that's your +1, -1 comparative analysis after the TA fires. So that's really good question.
Gotcha. One another thing, you this is exactly the point. We had a session, I remember, and you said like, okay, there is always for each time frame there is a level underneath, like -1, which will protect it. So basically,
Yep.
that 4 hour protects the daily, and if we would go to the lower 4 hour, I believe,
This like
it
the
yeah,
origin
and
down here.
even
Yep.
if we bounce from there, it like a break level, it tells us, okay, we will definitely go down. We just need to find the proper level to short in, right?
Yep. Yep. And you know that's where you're gonna then take this and you're gonna go to your hourlies. So like let's say, and we can only see what we can on the charts here. Let's say we hit this level here. I would then go to your hourlies and say like what hourly would break this move, right? Because
Yeah,
then you're gonna go and you're gonna find something like this. You just first look here. If you hit this, this is obviously protecting the move. It's a backside level, like your classic standard, inverse your charts, a backside origin level here. Hit this 4, and then you'd rebuy the 1. And if the 1 holds, you're moving down. Alternatively, you could go and you could say, well, where's the break level? You could just take this one and say like right here. So that would be the difference of did you bounce, take this off, take this off, take this off, take all these other levels off that aren't relevant, right? Like this would be your +1 -1. Like did you hit your 4? This would break it down for short. This would break it back up for longs. But then you still have to go into your 4 hour here, and then you're going through that same thing because you might just be +1 -1 against the daily. So then you'd have to also, break this piece up top here too. So like how high did that move go? Right. So there's
yeah,
kind of like both, you have to see both sides of it because they're both going to give you that different piece. Like if you bounce this hourly instantly, if you hit this 4 here, the break level, right? And then you hold this hourly, like this thing's just going to break down. If you don't hold this, that doesn't necessarily mean it's also not going to break down. It just means you're back up into the 4 hour queue and you need to see which one of these two are going to hold you, right? It doesn't mean that just because you didn't hold that move, this daily's in succession and it's moving up. That's just telling you this dump is not happening. Not yet, anyways. It's just telling you, like, okay, you hit this 4 hour break. It's not going to dump the move instantly right now. That's going to turn into an origin level that may hit multiple times in the future. You're now getting into this trail of, okay, the hourly didn't stop it because if it did, it would just instantly break the move. It wouldn't turn into an origin, right? But if you're going back up to this 4 hour information here, so if you hit that and you're going back up into this information, right? This right here is telling you you're moving down. Well, that might create the origin, and then the next hourly hold level here, that one will hold it down and that will break the move, right? So that's just the difference between, is this level going to turn into an origin? Yes or no? Like this 4 hour level here. That's what that's telling you. Like it's communicating, will this be an origin? Yes or no? If it hits this hourly backside, it will not be an origin. If it goes above this hourly backside, it will become an origin, right? And then that's going to try to move up again. And then you'll have another like whatever 1 hour trail here, and then that might break it down. Or you might end up just recreating a bigger time frame down here because you stayed down here so long, and this origin, and that happens too, right? You start creating bigger time frames, like a daily against the 4s. So you end up being in this like hovering spot where you've hit this and you hit this and this, and then eventually you have a daily hold level here, and then that changes the architecture again. But again, comparative analysis, we don't have those events yet on the chart. We only have our technicals, right? So really, what that +1 -1 is telling you here is directly telling you, can this be an origin? Yes or no, right? Like that's what that 1 hour is telling you. Hit that. Sorry. Hit that. No, it won't be an origin. Go above that. Yes, it will be an origin. So like it's just telling you. So then you like if you went above that hourly, then you'd automatically know to deep dive this level. So you'd want to set like a buy around here, and then that's fine. And you could buy whatever next level is there, and or whatever the deep dive of that target is, or just go 70% below, wherever the level is, like 25,751, go like 70% below it if there's no level. And because then that'll
uh,
just, that origin will form in that moment.
but wouldn't we try to buy at that moment the latest level before the origin, which might protect the origin,
No,
or
because
would
the
you
origin
just
wouldn't,
place a
no, because the origin wouldn't be created yet. If you hit this, it would be a break. You'd have to go and test it another time, right? Like this is the test you're buying. So if that laddered above it like this, it wouldn't actually be an origin.
Yeah, exactly. In that
See,
scenario, like we would buy a level before that, and in the hope that we will go for a long run.
I guess it depends on the
Like,
liquidation you're using. Like, because you're saying like buy something like this and then it's going to go like that and you're in the green, right?
No, I was like not below that arrow. Like we are like I thought like some smaller, because there's always that smaller level which will actually protect the origin. And that was my question. Like basically, should we buy that potential protection level, or should we really place our order then at that moment at the origin itself?
You should
Like
buy
on the
that.
the second touch.
Yeah. Oh, on the second touch, not the third.
Yeah,
You're talking about this
okay,
one here, right?
we have right now, like, okay, we are in that situation, we are going up,
You
and we
you
know
you
that we
you
will create
should
an origin.
you should buy above, right? When you go past this hourly hold level. If that's where that, I think that's where that hourly hold level existed. So you, like, if you go above this level, that's when you would take this one and say, like, okay, here, let's buy there, right? Because now
Okay.
you're playing the trend, not the origin.
I've got a couple other questions.
Shoot, go ahead.
Okay.
Because
If
that's
nobody
so
minds.
before you go ahead with that entropy, I'll just kind of finish up my spiel here. This is why I like to have all the levels in a chronological or a hierarchical order, where I have daily. For you'll notice I don't have any like 15-minute levels below this. Like, I don't have a 15-minute level here, I don't have a 15 there, I don't have that there. I have one level only, which is a 3-minute, which is me saying that we're still keeping all chains open, right? But you'll notice I don't have like a 15-minute inside this deep dive 4. I have exactly one level, but that level, the only reason I have this one is because it's going to hit the daily at that level, right? Like, it's going to have that like connected, both get hit at the same time. And that's the only reason I have this. I don't have any 15s in here. I don't have any hourlies in here, nothing. We have this hourly tested here. That's basically gone. I would never rebuy that hourly. If it was, again, a daily, I would, because we're on that daily move. But at this point, the only thing I'm looking at is either a 4 and above, or the daily, which is going to be represented at the 3. And that's it for that. So, like, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Entropy. What was your questions?
So I came like two questions which are connected to itself. First of all, you had that situation with Ivat where in the last session he should have marked some origin, and then he said, no, this is disconnected origin. You need to use the other one, which confused a lot of us, because like, okay, what's the deal with origins? Because we wanted to move forward in timeframes. Yeah, is there like, what was the case? Do you remember probably?
I don't know what the question is.
Like, in
He's talking
which
about when we were comboing. We were, it was like a situation where we were in +1 -1, like just going back and forth, and we hit in, I think, like an hourly on top, and we were looking for the 15 origin above it, I think.
Okay.
And I had marked it prior to the hourly instead of after the hourly, and you were like, no, because you can only move forward in time. It was that situation. I can't remember the
Yeah.
exact of it though.
That's a super easy one to answer. Yeah. Okay. So, like, if here, if this was an origin, for example, right, and you had a 15-minute origin here, right? Like, if this is a 15 and this is a 4, oh my god, auto color tool. Okay, dude.
Click it and hit the 15.
There we go. If this is a 15 and this is a 4, like, if you're using a 4-hour origin, you can't use a 15, because the 15 would have to happen in front of that 4. Like, you're breaking the time frame,
Okay.
right? So,
Yeah,
like,
alright.
you have to find, like, it, because it's about the candle that's outside of it. So, like, when you're looking for these origins, like, you can mark this one right here. So it's like, is this the origin? Did this ever break? This didn't break. So this would be the correct origin, right, to use. Like, if you were going here, if this candle happened in the same candle, like, if these two were sharing the same candle, you could only use that 15. Okay, so it's like that. If it was in front of it in terms of time frame, if they were on the same candle. If this
Gotcha.
4-hour existed here, you'd have to delete this. We can go to the 4-hour to see if that's the same candle. Son of a B, it's not. Do you see what I mean though about, like, the same?
Yeah,
like, if
that's
it's in
easy.
the same candle, like, if this, it can't. Okay, let's try to find a different one here. Let's go here. Let's go to the 15, and let's pretend this one's not going to do it either, is it? Well, we're gonna check. We're gonna check. Nope, it's still in the same candle. Let's pretend this was an origin here, right? Let's see. Go to the 4. Okay, now they're in the same candle. You couldn't use the 15 here. Because they're in the same candle, you have to move forward from that. So, like, this origin would have to be shifted to here. or here
Yeah.
if there's no
Yeah.
hard close. Like it would have to be, because if it's in the same candle, that time frame has to exist beyond it. Otherwise, you're getting into a timing issue. But it's perfectly
that's easy.
acceptable also to go like this and say, here's your 4. Is there an origin that happens before that that's outside of that 4-hour candle? Well, there is. It's right here. So then you would just actually delete the 4 because it's happening outside of that candle. So then you could say, oh yeah, here's your real origin. Like this is the real level right here. But if you're using this one and the 15 is also in this, so like if this was here, you it has to be in front of that 4-hour time frame. Does that make sense? Is that
The last part confused a little bit. So like that basically, that 50-minute, which isn't forward in time, we would use that one because it's the oldest one.
because it's not
No,
connected?
like if
if
clear
these two
within,
were in the same candle, this 15
yeah,
minute has to be in front of
that's
it.
clear.
Yeah.
That's clear. Okay.
If you were here, if this is your origin here, you can use the 15 because it's not connected into the same time frame. Because
Oh, shit. Okay, all right.
this would be going backwards in time for the 4-hour. This is not. This is using a completely different candle altogether.
Okay, so in this situation, the 50-minute would be active, not the 4-hour.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
But then if
okay.
it happened to be that they were both in this, it would be the 4-hour that you use.
Yeah.
Because the 4-hour would technically be older because the 15 could never exist before the 4. So if they were in the same candle, you would always use the 4 here. Because technically the 15 can never exist before this 4 unless it was inside of this candle. And then that's fine. Then you could use this one right here. Then you would use the 15 if it was even older. You see what I mean? But if they were here, you could only use a 15 past this. So technically this could never exist inside of this same candle, but before it, like it could never exist like from the one candle previous. Like it could never exist here despite, or like right here. This could actually never exist because it's going to be in the same candle. Oh my God, it's actually not. It's the 15-minute time. Okay, dude. But anyways.
Well, if you're marking the beginning of a 4-hour candle, wouldn't any 15 prior to that automatically be in the candle before it? Because you're marking the opening of the 4-hour candle, aren't you? By marking a 4-hour candle.
Well, if you're marking the 4-hour candle there, like, okay, so you're saying, like, here's the 4-hour candle, right? That's the beginning of it. In this case, if you're marking the beginning of it, yes, but then you have other time frames too. Like you have the hourly, you have, so like people get into that queue where you have like an hourly with a 15-minute and they can share the same candle, or like a 15-minute to a 5-minute, for example.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's just, the way that, I guess the way that you say it or the way that people read it. So like if you're marking this, then technically, yes, that's correct. I bet, yes. The way I was explaining it was just to kind of give that separation in the mind to where the 15-minute would have to be forward from that 4-hour. It could never be behind it. That's all.
Yeah.
So like just the way I was explaining it was just to kind of put context of, but you're right. Like the 4-hour starts right here. That's the starting on that time frame, like at 2 o'clock sharp, right? So 2:15, like it can only move forward from there.
Can I shoot the next one?
Sure.
It's a good one. If you have
I'll be the
break
judge
level,
of that. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just kidding.
All good. Hey guys, if I disturb any of your questions, just let me know. I shut up.
You're good,
if
man.
you have an origin, if you are in a situation where you start to create an origin level on top and you start to create an origin level on the bottom.
Yes.
So basically Pandora's box.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're talking about like Pandora's box here now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is like, I believe last session there was like you made some example like which offsets what, and this is where I got confused the past days. Like basically like what's the key moment, like which trend? I believe it was a trend or something like that, which tells us okay in which direction we are most likely to go, or like is there anything?
Yeah. So whenever you're in a Pandora's box situation where you see you have a 4-hour hold level hit on top and one on bottom, and you're starting to create this compression against timeframes like that, that's where you're going to use +1, -1. Because if you think back to what I was saying earlier about the technicals have to be created first before the comparatives can be created. So if you have to use your theory before you use your application layer. So if you're going to have a Pandora's box, that means your theory layer has been set. So that means your technicals have executed because you've got technically an origin on the top and technically an origin on the bottom, and you're in a Pandora's box. A Pandora's box gets created off your theory layer. because in order for a Pandora's box to exist, you have to have a point on the top and the bottom. So that's your first step there, where you're going to say, okay, how can I see which origin on the top or bottom is going to hold? So now you've entered this Pandora's box because you have two hold levels adjacent to each other or opposingly to each other. Theory is created. Now you use +1, -1 because that's application layer. So now you go down to your 1 hour time frames because you have something to compare off of. You have comparative analysis that can be created. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying a bit earlier, which I think this is like really good for everybody to hear. Actually, Entrepreneur questions are fire today. Sometimes they're like, okay, a little questionable. This guy's not paying attention, but today they're pure fire. The good questions. I'm just kidding, by the way. Your questions aren't bad. So no, but this is like a good point to make that just follows up from earlier, that your technicals have to get created first. So your theory layers in day trading, your theory layers have to be created before application layers can be used, which again is technical analysis and comparative. So you have Pandora's box that confirms your technicals are created, because technically you have, and it's not, I shouldn't say technically. So you have exactly an origin on the top and bottom. Those are technical analysis points. You can now compare them against each other. So comparative analysis can now be used that your technicals are set. If your technicals are not set yet, you cannot use comparative analysis. You see what I mean? So how you answer that question about Pandora's box is whatever origin you're setting on the top and bottom, whatever you're there, you're now going to go into your application layers. So now you can use +1, -1. So that gives you clarity of when to use +1, -1, right? It's an application layer. It can only be used once the application of it is set, right? Once the theory is created, then the application can be applied. Does that help clear it up and like when you would do it and why you would do it?
Yeah, kind of. It's
Makes
still
sense.
a little bit confusing with the, if you have an origin on top, if you have an origin on bottom. I came several times in the situation where I was like, hey, let's say like we are talking about I don't know, like a 50-minute origin, and we are coming, like we have a 5-minute trend and a 1 hour trend and whatever, like everything lines up, and that freaking fucking small kind of 5-minute origin rejects that stuff and rejects that stuff. But basically, like I'm going through Future of Trading right now, and it's like, yeah, you're creating that values, and in order to break that origin, you have to hold that level or that valley before several times, it seems like.
So
Definitely,
Origins are a tough one.
if you look at this
definitely
right
helps me
now,
a lot.
Sorry?
what's that, Ivan?
I was just saying it definitely helps me a lot because I've been like the past couple of days I've just been going like buck wild, like just exploring +1, -1 on the chart, and I just came to the conclusion like sometimes this thing's bang on and sometimes it doesn't work. So like it actually clears
Yeah.
up a lot for me.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
exactly what it
it's
is,
fine.
right? Like anything that's an application based, anything that's comparative analysis or application based can only be used after the technicals have been set, because there's no application to apply them to if it doesn't exist, right? It's like it's like trying to build a boat without wood. If you're building a wooden boat, you have the hammer, you have the nails, but if you don't have the wood, it's like you can't build the boat, right? It's kind of the same thing in trading and charting. It's like, okay, well, your technicals have to execute. Like right now on my screen, I've just defined 2 easy break levels. If you were going to make them origin levels, you'd have to do this. At this moment, you don't have a Pandora's box yet because you just have an origin on the bottom, right? So there's nothing you can say like +1 origin, -1 origin, because it's not created yet. When you go here, you still haven't created it yet. Maybe you have like a trend in play and a trend in play, something like that. I don't know. Like we're just making up a scenario here. This isn't a Pandora's box yet, right? And maybe this is like a 4-hour hold level. So like this one here, maybe this is like a 4-hour hold level, right? Okay, auto color. That's a 4-hour hold level. Like you would simply just have like trends and things like that. And this is a really clean, like you'd more likely be like this, right? Or if not that one, let's do an even more complex setup, which is this. Then fine. Then like at least at this point you have a trend. So now you're in the game of trends. You're not in the game of Pandora's box. You're in the game of trends now, right? So like this is like a common setup, a little more advanced and complicated than the first one where it creates an easy trend. This is more of a range trend, and then you have floating levels, different things that open up, and we won't get into that queue because that's a whole thing. But this is not Pandora's box yet, right? If it goes like this and hits this, all of a sudden now you have Pandora's box. Now you can use +1, -1 to see which side of the Pandora's box will break, right? If you didn't do that, you still have something like this, and then you have trend against trend like that, right? So then you can use +1, -1, but it's a game of trends. So it's very different, right? Like the application can only be, the comparatives can't happen until you have something to compare off of. So this being, like what you're asking about entropy, this moment here opens up your 4-hour levels. So then you would be something like this. My God, dude, the auto color tool is like just so abrasive. You literally have to like undo and then hit escape. So then you'd be here, and then you'd be Pandora's boxing between 4-hour levels, which would then be dictated by hold levels, right? Or I should say 1-hour levels. So like at this point, whichever 1-hour levels +1, -1 dictates, then that side of Pandora's box is breaking. But none of this +1, -1 can exist until this exact moment, right? Because that's the moment where comparative analysis kicks in. Pandora's box, is it created? Yes or no? And now we can work time frame up. So like right now we've defined this on the daily, right? Now we have to work time frame forward, like 4 hours, right? So now we have to get below this 4-hour hold and above this 4-hour hold. Well, we're already above this 4-hour hold. So then you'd likely do something like this where you just bounce between, and then you create more 4-hour levels. And then eventually you're going to get to a point where you see like, oh, there's a 1-hour level here. All of a sudden it went after that, right? And it went after it again. And then now all of a sudden this side of the Pandora's box is broken, because you went after your +1, -1. But that can't exist. But like that all of that application-based theory can't exist until the technicals are there. Like it's fine. Everything's still fine right there. You can't use +1, -1 for a Pandora's box here. It's just not there yet. It's application-based.
Would you essentially apply that application +1, -1 to whatever situation does form? Like if you do get into that situation where it was just trends against each other, like a trend situation, would you then
You
apply it
can,
to the
yes,
trend, or?
you can, but you have to understand the way that the comparative works, right? Like you can't just say, like, the moment you cross that line and say +1, -1, and you're applying it as a theory, and you're just starting to blanket it on everything, that's the moment that you're going to make mistakes, because you have to realize +1, -1 is application based. Application based is everything comparatives. Everything comparatives can't exist without the technicals. So then you just get into this kind of quandrum. Like, yeah, like you can't blanket apply +1, -1 to everything. Like going back to the very first session we did about +1, -1, I said, there's different ways we use it as whole level. There's different ways we use it in trends. There's different ways. And we're, over time, we're going through all these +1, -1 examples, because +1, -1 is like a very big movement towards comparative analysis 2.0, right? Like it would be backboned all off of like +1, -1, the idea of application-based theory. So yeah, you can't blanket apply +1, -1 to everything. You can't just say, here's a trend +1, -1. Like you have to understand how to use it, because it's a comparative analysis. It's application based, right? The comparative cannot exist until the technical is set.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in that situation where you had both the trends, the
Yeah,
technical
you
would be
could.
set, right?
Yep. Then you
Okay.
could use +1, -1. Yep. And you
We
can do
haven't
it with
really,
levels. You can do it with trends, since trends are levels.
yeah,
Yep, absolutely.
we just haven't
That
really
helps a
gone
lot.
into +1, -1 with trends yet, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's because, to understand that application layer is to be used with the technicals is a big, like, it's a big step to get there, right? Like, as I always say, like, you have to teach this stuff in chunks, because it's like, imagine hearing about +1, -1 as an application theory based against it before understanding how we actually use +1, -1. And then so forth, the chain goes on, right? Like +1, -1. Yeah. The important thing now is that you understand that it's application based. And this goes with all of your comparative analysis. It's the origin of why I called them comparative analysis like 4 or 5 years ago, or whenever butterfly effect came out. It's why I call them comparatives, because you have to compare the events of technicals against each other in order. And that's your application based layer, not your theory based layer.
Right.
So